Welcome back. In this segment, we're going to take a deep dive into the part of Jobtimize that really defines it and makes it very different from anything else that you might have ever used to help you find your way. And that is that we start with understanding who you are at a very deep level. It starts with personality. It begins with understanding your traits and your attitudes and looking at it instead of through a lens of the resume, which is your education and your experience, the things you've done and the things you know up until now, taking a much broader view of it and saying, based on who you are as a person, what are the kinds of jobs that you're likelier to find more fulfilling, that you're likelier to enjoy, and that you're likelier to perform at better because of those things? So we're looking at the screen here of a fictitious person, Sam Sample, and you'll see that we've laid this out in a very particular way. So one of the things that you probably didn't realize at first is as you were completing the behavioral questionnaire, Jobtimize was actually collecting information from you across a total of 25 different traits. So it makes it a very broad tool. We measure lots of things. We measure very detailed and precise things, and we the system is designed to take the scores that you have in each of those 25 traits and present them as you see here on the screen. We've deliberately hidden scores because numbers tend to get people a little bit confused, not because they don't understand the numbers, but because whenever we see a number, we tend to assume things. And so instead, what we've done is we've presented attributes. And as you see, the 25 traits that we capture are laid out here across 5 different categories. So, how are you likely to approach your work? How do you behave as an individual? How are you likely to interact with others? How are you likely to embrace change? And how are you likely to weather challenge and adversity? And and you'll see that some of the bubbles are colored in and others are not. And the really simple shorthand for understanding that is in those traits or those behaviors where you behave like most people. Um, and so the way the scoring works, if you're interested, is 68% of the population is going to score in the middle in any given trait. So the bubbles that are not colored in are those areas where you scored like most people. The bubbles that are colored in are those areas where you scored differently than most people. And those would be the things about you that most define who you are. They'd be the things about you that others would probably notice first and remember the longest. They're the things about you that likely have the strongest bearing on the relationships that you have with others and how they go. And one of those very important relationships in life is work. So it's no different as it's comparing you to jobs. We're really looking at it through the lens of compatibility in the same way as a site might be for other kinds of relationships. And so these traits are interactive. If you hover over the I symbol for information, it'll give you a description of the trait. If you click on it, it will show you 4 bullet points. And it's really important for me to point out there is no right or wrong here. Everybody has signature traits. They're the things that make us unique, right? They're the things about us that really define who we are and the value we bring to life. So every one of these attributes that you see in the bubble is a positive attribute. You can't fail being yourself, but you can fail to put yourself in a position where you being you can be easy, fun, and profitable. And we've all been in jobs where we've had to pretend to be somebody we're not in order to get by, and it's exhausting. So the objective here is to help you start to understand and own who you are in the eyes of others and in relation to work. The other thing to point out is um, the labels will give you a hint on whether you're at one end of the spectrum or the other. So if you take, for example, extroversion, there are some people who are very extroverted. There are lots of people who are sort of introverted and extroverted. They can turn it on when they need to. And there are other people like Sam here who's more private and more reserved and is going to be happy working in a self-directed way. Neither's right or wrong. But if you take somebody like Sam, who's very private, and you put him in a hotel job, for example, where he's greeting guests all day long at the front desk, he's going to be exhausted by the end of the day because he's going to have to pretend to be much more extroverted than he would naturally be. So that's how these traits start to play into the kinds of jobs that you're best suited to. At the bottom of this page is a link that if you click it will download a career planning report for you. If you open that report, you'll see that it gives you the information on your signature traits and your other traits. I'm sorry, let me just scroll here a little bit. In the middle part of the report, what the system's doing is it's taking Sam's unique pattern across the 25 traits that we measured, projecting him into a position library of over 1,250 different careers, and identifying Sam's best picks, and that's what you see on the list here. And so, you'll also notice there are two lists. The first one is jobs that generally require post-secondary education. For those of us who have it or are on our way to getting it, this is a list that you might use even to help you choose your majors if you're on your way to school shortly. The second list is a set of jobs that tend to be more vocational in nature. They wouldn't take the same requirement of investment in formal education, and people could very often earn as they learn in these types of positions. The other piece that I'll point out here is every one of these positions is linked to a tremendous resource called ONET. So if I click on butchers and meat cutters for just a moment, you'll see that it's going to take me to that page in the ONET online system. And the reason I'm showing you this is if you stumble across careers that you know very little about, that you're interested in finding out more, ONET's a great place to start because it's got all sorts of information about similar job titles. It'll tell you about how the person spends their day, what sorts of skills are prerequisites, what sort of training is a prerequisite. It'll tell you at a glance whether the job is growing or declining in numbers. It will tell you the context of the work, so where and what the environment's usually like for people in these jobs. So lots of resources available inside the ONET system. The final tip that I'll share with you here is this page is can be really useful to share with people that you're in close relationships with. You might want to get them to do it as well, because often having a conversation about who I am and how I show up can go a long way to telling us how we can get along better together, how we can be more productive together. The other piece that we've seen people do very effectively is some of these attributes, and particularly some of these descriptive statements, should be appearing in your resumes and in your cover letters and in the conversations that you're bringing to employers in interview settings or even in exploratory conversations. There's something really attractive about somebody who is self-aware. There's something really compelling about somebody who can talk about themselves, and you've got all sorts of descriptors here to describe you, and can help the employer connect the dots between who I am as a person and why you really need to be considering me for this role. And so that will, if you bring that conversation to the interview with the employer, I guarantee you'll differentiate yourself from just about everybody else the employer's spoken to that day.